Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Café Muse Literary Salon. Thank you, Michael Davis, for the lovely guitar music. I'm Ellen Cole, and I'm hosting tonight along with Henry Crawford, who is also our technical guru, the person who makes the Café Muse magic happen. Our featured poets are Kelly Cressio Moeller and Abby Wender. I'll introduce Kelly and Henry will introduce Abby. We encourage you to buy our featured authors' books tonight and to donate to Café Muse to support our literary program. You can find the links for buying books and for making a donation in the chat. Audience members have been muted. This helps prevent feedback problems for our readers and ensures uninterrupted programming. Please bear with us if we do encounter a technical glitch. During the reading, you may use the chat to comment. Our program is scheduled for 1 hour. Please join us for our next Café Muse reading on Monday, August 1st, our annual translation program, which will be curated and emceed by renowned poet and translator Barbara Goldberg. Also, be sure not to miss a very special WordWorks event that will be happening 2 days from now. On Wednesday, July 13th, 2022, at 7 p.m. Eastern, the WordWorks will present the YouTube premiere of the last ever Joaquin Miller Poetry Program and tribute to Jacqueline Potter, which was recorded on June 9, 2022. Visit our premiere homepage to set up a reminder and watch the video together with our WordWorks community on July 13th, 2022. Links to the premiere will be put into the chat during the program. And now I'm delighted to introduce our first poet of the evening, Kelly Cressio Moeller. Kelly is a poet and a visual artist. Her debut poetry collection, Shade of Blue Trees, was published by Two Sylvias Press in 2021 and was a finalist for the Wilder Prize. Her poems have been nominated for Pushcart Prizes, Best of New Poets, Best of the Net, and have appeared widely in journals, anthologies, and at Poet Lore, Gargoyle, Tinderbox, North American Review, Salamander, Thrush, Valparaiso, Waterstone Review, and Southern Humanities Review, among others. An associate editor at Glass Lyre Press, she lives in the Bay Area with her husband, 2 sons, and their Basset hound. Kelly's poems marry an eye for detail with startling images, word combinations that jolt you into a fresh vision of something as familiar as night or as quotidian as tense shoulders. Her work is full of wordplay and music. In her poem, Panels from a Blue Summer, she writes, "Peacocks ring the rotunda, shadow steps through the step from Dachau to Dachas." And in a later stanza in the same poem, she writes, "To be the lever or the left, the cleaver of the cleft, his language a glacier calving, nouns vanish under ice, the bereaver, the bereft." She shows the skill of a virtuoso in her use of forms, prose poems, erasures written to overlay collages, which are also laid over pages from Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin. Traditional free verse, poems fragmented by white space, segmented by asymmetrical sections, reveal her ability to use form to create surprising and very effective poems. Her poems deal with loss, sadness, despair, and the possibility of rebirth, frequently using natural images to carry and amplify those feelings into a kind of dirge. Reviewer Dana Kinsley writes, Kelly Cressio Moeller conducts a tremendous chorus of voices so mournful and lush that all of nature harmonizes. The beauty spellbinds, making the reader feel as if we've been privileged to witness language as a potent kind of magic. So now I'm going to stop talking and let you partake of Kelly's magic. Let me present poet Kelly Cressio Moeller.
Wow. I am so grateful and thankful for that utterly gorgeous introduction, Ellen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really
Welcome.
touched. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Henry and Maja. I know she's not here, but she's been an incredible point person through all this, and I wanted to give a shout out to her and, of course, to Karen. It is just so lovely to be reading at an event I have long admired, and especially with such a terrific co-reader as Abby Wender. I'm so excited to hear her after me. A good poet friend of mine has called my book, let me just show it to you here, Shade of Blue Trees, an Ars Poetica of grief and beauty, as it is a meditation on the different types of losses, whether there be loved ones, such as parents or friends, or of the body, what it can and cannot recover from, and also types of innocence and how the natural world helps in healing, or at least how it's helped me in healing. I'm going to begin with the poem that starts the book. It was also the last poem I wrote for this book. It's called Portent with Moonset and Blackbirds. For a long time, I wanted to drink a cup of winter, to become tipsy on early dark and longer starshine, the thinning light, my favorite ether. These days I am uncertain, dead reckoning my way through, surrendering to mystery and surprise of mapless navigation. That fistful of blackbirds thrown across my windshield, I don't know what their flurried wing beats were trying to tell me. Not every moment is a teacher in the same way patience does not mean measured in action. I am only a woman who continues to bury her dead, wearing a clenched jaw that expects diamond dust from crown crush, shoulders that ride so high on worry they mistake themselves for wings. I never liked what I was called, even though my father named me, and my name in his voice was the last word I'd hear him speak. Last night I went to bed feeling hopeless and profoundly lonely. I left the curtains open wide, sleep plowed a ragged field of uneven rows, but in the morning's early darkness, the fullest moon poured its cool, bewitching light into the small bowls of my room and garden. As it hung impossibly low over the Pacific, I drank and drank. This is Departure. 2 months ago, I scribbled poem notes on hospital paper towels, my mother dying, snowed on morphine, pneumonic lungs, sinking boats. She wanted no one to bail out. Her small hands inflated twice their size as if to keep afloat. The echocardiogram detailed a scallop shell of aortic waves, mitral valve murmurations. How many secrets did her starlings harbor? To mark each changing hour, Pegasus, nailed mid-flight on the beige wall, shook his mane from side to side. I consulted the meadow priests of purple thistle, whose prickly heads provided no comfort. They said, "Death is a circling wolf. There will be no one left to call you by your full name." Grief falls in rain-whipped sheets. The shadows of the dead weigh more than you know. I looked to the night sky for a comet tail, but only cold stars stared back, unblinking. That month my mother died, I did not bleed, and the tips of my hair wintered. A book finished inside me. My ink tongue froze. Self-portrait as empty reliquary. No saint has ever lived here. The ultrasound, myomas dying by an open fire, body truthing the bog, dead leaves, an asphodel, the strangest fruit, the never born. Thumb-worn rosary, beads now stick in my teeth. Is barren ground any less sacred? Silver leaf my insides, place a candle in my hollow, follow, fallow. Even broken glass refracts light. Suture, spectre, sepulchre, but look what you have made in fall's gold air, hectares plowed, harrowed, hollowed. Stone webs of scar tissue tracery. Without my cervix, I am no less queen. Open me, see there's nothing left to give. To no longer smell of blood. No saint will ever live here. This is an ekphrastic poem after a Vermeer painting, which is the title of the poem, Woman in Blue Reading a Letter. And it begins with an epigraph from Nico Case. It was so clear to me, it was almost invisible. It was mid-afternoon when I arrived in Amsterdam. The flight from California fueled a headache I couldn't shake. I checked into my hotel room, hoping a hot shower would restore me. I was slipping on my robe when I noticed the blinking red light on the room's phone, a message from my mother to call home. Her voice was low, a strange mixture of indecision and sadness. She spoke slowly, as though lowering an anchor. There had been an accident. Tommy, close as a brother, was dead. A drunk driver crossed the divider, hit him head on, the engine in his lap. I don't remember telling her goodbye, hanging up the phone, or getting dressed, but I rode the elevator down and walked the stone-paved streets, shell-shocked under a turquoise sky. At the Rijksmuseum, whose rib-vaulted portico reminded me of a Gothic crypt, bicycles sped through the passageway before I entered. Upstairs, Vermeer had a room of his own. I stepped off the hardwood floor and sank deep into blue carpet. She was on the damask wall next to the milkmaid, illuminated by skylight glow, so small she could fit in my suitcase. But I didn't care about the light or the colors. I didn't care about the woman or the news in her letter. It was the map hanging behind her. The one detail that had seemed incidental before was all I could focus on now. All those meandering lines leading to and away from home. This is Meditations on Disappearing. 1. Don't waste the sun's time. Start growing a beard for winter. Summer's skin plum knees ripen just below the eyelet hem. Between the laundry and the bourbon, study corsetry and lace wings, speak of floating ribs, pinioned wings, discover where birds go to die. A series of open-mouth pores separating daylight and prey. Gone is gone. 2. Once thieves tiptoed by candlelight, left impressions in wax, blue sweat from copper poisoning, blackened cork, a bead of oil, tried to fill the furrows and whirls with another's life. Fingerprints lay bare, but won't tell where the bodies are buried. 3. I met a woman who was mauled by a black bear, arms lost, hands replaced by hooks. At parties, she says her name, relives the story as if by script. 40 years on, the bear is still alive. This is my one and only Obad. I think I saw Richard Peabody here, and I want to give a shout out to him because he first published this in Gargoyle, was a really early supporter of my work, and I can't thank him enough for that. Begins with a epigraph from Ingmar Bergman. The demons don't like fresh air. What they like best is if you stay in bed with cold feet. It's a suburban Obad with French horn. This morning, more leaf blower than bird song, autumn chills, stained glass leaves, fissures orange where summer used to live. My body carries me over cement trails, breaks through tethers of glistening web, first down the street. The neighbor's yard, punctuated with foil, gauze, playing cards, curiosities stuck in dry, knee-high weeds. An arm of Bermuda grass, suburban kelp, catches my laces, tries to pull me down into its resentful sea. As a teen, her parents made her mow the blighted patch where lawn used to be. A few houses down, the garage door of the quiet blue house is open. The wife sculpts her juniper tams as though they are giant bonsai, each cut precise, unerring, a week of mornings to shape the hedges into great waves. She disappears before 9 a.m. I don't know her name. I round the corner toward the elementary school my children have outgrown. Car lines narrow the street. All the parents bow to phones. One child's science project has lost its cell membrane in the boxwood. There isn't enough time to create a second skin. Sidestepping puddles of golden rain lanterns, I hear Brahms's horn trio playing from an open window. Notes ricochet off the freeway's barrier wall, trapeze through the air. When I was small, my mother taught me about the French horn. Her dawn's now an hourglass of yesterdays. Despite the drought, some lawns mushroom with death caps, enough to poison the entire block. Goodbye, sex offenders. So long, neighbors who leave their howling dog outside all night. Farewell, fans of insomniac home improvement. Sweat darkens my underwire. Back home from my kitchen window, the hills look blue in the arms of an old moon. I baptize eggs for breakfast. Already morning detaches, floats toward night's throat. So there are four long lyric poems in the book, and it's an invented form, which I call the panel. And each section is a different voice. And this is the one that Ellen was referring to. It's called Panels from a Blue Summer, and it begins with an epigraph from Alice Fulton. Listen, I didn't want your tears in my eyes. 1. I lack the luster that my lilacs can muster at any time of year. A summer of torched moods, bruised gin, dark as the sea of our newborn, white waves of wool-gathering mavens and owl-face conversations. My mouth blooms bowls of amaranth and thistle in the melancholy shade of blue trees. Outside my window, knots in the fence stare drunk as bull's eyes, concentric ripples landlocked in dendrochronology, like Van Eyck triptychs, layers upon layers of brittle meditations, appealing in reverse. 2. Peacocks ring the rotund rotunda, shadow steps through the steppe from Dachau to Datchas, up to their knees in windbreaker trees, chryselephantined. A wall-eyed jay cracks a cherry's skull against the cheekbone of dusk. The world is running out of virgins. Too many shoes from overstayed welcomes left by the door. Car wash girls with yellow semaphores pistol whip July, swallow sunlight clockwise. Their closed eyes shine with the kiss of gold coins. In German, the word for poison is gift. 3. To be the lever or the left, the cleaver of the cleft, his language, a geisher calving, nouns vanish under ice, the bereaver, the bereft. The spots on his hands form island chains he visits when lonesome. The natives there are kind, blowing memory darts in flashback. An index finger itches for his revolver's cool scythe. He tells his story to a nearby stone, carves one word upon it, soon. 4. She will miss the hiss of every sunset, all figures in her mirror dissolving as they near. The rarest of North London birds dies 100 times, falling from the ledge of her skeleton key, carpet burns and whiskey dick, the slide of houndstooth over taffeta. I stretch along the black watch where secrets of her beehive find me in notes of shimmering mica. She tucks her wings and dives. Big Sur and the Northern California landscape are really strong characters in this book, and my final 3 poems are all rooted there. This is begin and end at Big Sur. See the coral dust over the mountains? The hooves of sunrise horses are in full gallop. No one told the bees it was a silent retreat. Look at my palm where these slivers of heart and fate intersect. You are here. What if a woodpecker has a migraine? A dying ash, its upturned barren candelabras still majestic. My trailer's sliding door is stuck, gives a little more each morning. First whale pod sighting, cerulean breach and swirl, worth the sunstroke. I'm convinced this sowbug crossing my path is the same one who made love to my eraser last year. A schoolgirl crush on ponderosa pines, spiky hair, limber branches, muscled cones like silent birds. In late afternoon, pampas grass shines silver as the hair in my brush. Starburst spores float over my shoulder. Someone's made a wish upon a dandelion clock. I turn around, no one is there. I hold the sun's hand until it falls asleep. The ocean creates its own light. This poem wasn't in the version that I handed in to 2 Sylvias, and my parents came to me in a dream and simply said, put it back in. And I don't argue with my ghosts, so this is called Visitation. I walked along a paved road high above the Pacific, and 2 nimble deer appeared beside me on the hill. I stopped to look at them, they stopped to look at me, and when they moved, their hooves tapped a familiar code only I could decipher. I understood those deer were my parents, checking in to say, your life is not invisible to us, and the love we always had for you continues, even now, as we nibble on low-hanging branches, even now, as we climb higher up the hill, even now, as we turn our heads away, leaving again. And my last poem, which is also the last in the book, Something to Remember. Darkness does not hunger for anything. It has everything it needs. The ribs of shadows are fat with secrets of the living and the dead. It never wallows in loneliness, never says, leave a message for me if you can. It doesn't care about your tongue of honey and stars, your breath of apples and wine. It's busy quilting corners of indifference and will return again and again. As you go from room to room, cloaking your mirrors for winter, let the coldness you feel at the nape move in like fog, shawling you in her gown of gray beads. Listen when she whispers, if you are patient, your eyes will adjust to the dark. Thank you very, very much. You guys have been lovely listeners.
Thank you so much, both Kelly and Ellen. What a great start to our program tonight. Over the years, we at Café Muse have had the great pleasure of spotlighting several poets who are graduates of the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College. Tonight, Wally Abigail Wender joins us from New York. Wender's poems come at me in all directions, like a frontal assault on loss, and showing us how we might use language and irony to discover love at the end of a journey of pain. The poems in Reliquary bring us immediately and emotionally into the soul cancer of addiction. Finding the exact words for this is Abigail Wender's gift to us. Abigail Wender is a poet and translator. Her debut poetry collection, Reliquary, was published in February of 2021. Her work has appeared in the Cortland Review, Disquieting Muse Quarterly, Epiphany Literary Review, Kenyon Review Online, Massachusetts Review, the New Orleans Review, and the Tupelo Quarterly. Her translation of Iris Hanika's novel, The Bureau of Past Management, was published in October 2021. I asked Abigail, what is it about coming into poetry that has surprised you the most? And her surprising reply was the way in which her work and poetry has been aroused by her interest in translation, and how these sister arts, as she called them, give energy to all aspects of her work. She is a dedicated teacher with a long practice of leading creative workshops, so I look forward with all of you to experiencing the marvelous creative power in her work. So, Abigail Wender, please come up to our Café Muse Zoom stage, unmute yourself, and have at it.
Thank you, Henry. That was, and Kelly, those poems were very beautiful and very wonderful, emotionally touching, and I was very struck by how our work braids in many ways. And that's quite beautiful. And thank you, Café Muse, for inviting me today to read to you. Like Kelly, having a book out during a pandemic is an experience unlike any other. Maybe that's the best way to put it. This is my book. It's called Reliquary, and it's got a cover that is, well, I think of them as medicine bottles, but maybe they're reliquaries. So I'm going to read, I'll start with this very short poem called Barn Swallow. It's sort of states perhaps a question. There are many questions in this book, but it states a question that is abiding through the book. Barn Swallow. Shit streaks off the glass, and the swallow shrieks from a near tree to see the eggs or the chicks, whichever's in the nest. On closer view, two nests side by side, how to keep close and away. Like Kelly, a lot of my poems, and as Henry said, are dealing with loss. In particular, the core of this book is the loss of one of my brothers to addiction, and that's not how he died, but related to that. So there are many poems that focus on that, but I'll work our way in a little bit. This poem is called Stone Lion. The lion at the family mausoleum lies still, mossy-backed and obedient. When no one watched, I wrote it. I never thought of those buried, only wanted to escape the living who were so easily offended. Our grandfather hated the place. When everyone you know is dead, you won't like it either. The lion stares from the cemetery bed. No one mounts the statue. It's silence that's offensive, banging up against the sky. This next poem takes place in Sri Lanka. where my husband is from, and where we have spent quite a lot of time. It's called A Blessing. And I guess the only other thing that might be helpful to know is that in South Asia, you wear white to funerals and when you're grieving, as opposed to our habit. So, a blessing. Already the air had begun to fry, yet it was just cool enough for us to jog a few blocks to Vihara Mahadevi Park, where your father's heart failed. I met the gaze of the street sweeper, staring at your bare legs, my naked arms. His spit landed close. A new 12-foot corrugated fence hid the squatters from our sight, though nothing can hide my pale skin or the smell of burning plastic from copper wire, which isn't the only smell of desperation. Do you remember standing by the bench, trees filled with sleeping bats? Buddha watched behind his plaster lids, those who wash and drink in these fountains, and those who stand motionless, wrapped in white. He knows the spot where your father fell, all equal in the Buddha's blessings. May he find nirvana, may we find nirvana. But I get ahead of myself. I'm going to read the central sequence in this book. It's called Auguries. There are there's a lot of dialogue, so I may add a little, he said or something like that here, because I realized it's got a lot of dialogue and I don't quite know how to do that. So, Auguries. Oh, my brother, no more your orphan mouth. Why can't I kneel and pray? I let myself out the window, take the fire escape. The days pant, the days hang. He vanishes like water through my fingers, but he wasn't made of water or light, though he seemed lucent, tender. After the evening bath, the child who wrapped a towel turban style around his head joked, "I'm delightful to be with." He was right about the war, and I was a pedantic twerp. He ate mayonnaise sandwiches, played trumpet, then flute, disappeared into the dog's luxuriant fur, whip and speed of ocean surf, devoured our mother's ice cream wafer cake, licking the whisk she'd hand him. The poet Horace told his friend not to weep. It's all superfluous, I won't be there. This is a reliquary to hold my brother's gifts, his sad kindness. What to say to those who remember him? I wait to hear him praised. What led him to that outermost gate? Our absent father, our violent elder brother? One blames the mother, at least that's what ours thought. Don't wear that. No one will ever love you. You look like trash. Mother, who brought the grown child home, stayed awake with him, strung out, shallow-breathed, who stored his methadone on her refrigerator shelf. Our old elder brother weeps, back shaking. He looks like a crow hiking his shoulders, raised for flight. His red hair dyed blue-black. Mother looks out the window hung with sky. Tears mark her brown suede jacket, slide from the creased face and wide mouth, from her neck to her hands, from her dove-like body, her dark head, fine hair, the sharp smell of her as she bends over me, my hand patting her back, She stares at a point beyond this, twists papers my father demands she sign, and gives in, forsakes her older boys. They will live with their father. At a flash in the sky, she beckons her sons back into the room, as if they may come like music through a window. Take a sip. This is a dialogue with letters. I find a cache of love letters, airmail paper still crisp. I read, I found a home for us, sunny and cheap. On which occasions does she reread these letters? Each time they go to court? Kitten, I'm confident you're not pregnant. Each time my 2 older brothers run away, steal, deal drugs, are sent to rehab, psych ward, prison? I've bought a navy pinstripe suit for the wedding. Below my father's signature, she has appended with age-old scorn, had a wife, he couldn't keep her. The house is divided. Descended from gray wolves, our affectionate dog barks, guards the domus. Wide-mouthed mother packs the linen drapes, takes my younger brother and me. Far-sighted father takes the ivory chest and older brothers. The dog of the era is left behind to shepherd, dig the rat hole by the brook, to pace, retreat, and wail. Dying, my mother asks, what madness was I thinking to forget that dog? You won't want it when you have it, she says. The light bulb gives no heat. The lukewarm batter never sets. Nothing bakes in the toy oven. She knows the folly of desire. I am too old for make-believe, but she buys it because I've lost father, brothers, house, and dog. Driving half-lit, snowy streets, the cabbie says, keep fingers off glass. From the rear view mirrors swing bronze baby shoes. Whose are those? Who are we? Shuttled from home to home, knapsacks rattling on the seat. 2 mice in a tin? My baby brother's fingers leap on glass. Ghosts jump from the past. Reading Montaigne, How to Live. Under the green umbrella, death sits, hoofing up grass, drinking sangria. I'll call again tomorrow. Make sure you're ready. Okay, I answer, watering grass seed under the maples. This poem has a line from a jingle that was used by Purdue Pharma. I think you'll recognize it, or you may not know it, but it's kind of obvious. Hiking. I try to understand why countless unnamed pollutants poison our air, how millions of dollars were spent marketing opiates. Get in the swing with OxyContin. The mountain path ends in rock. Hiking, I break my walking stick. It's replaceable. There's a silence that's like unspoken complaints, 2 minds not making amends. At the meadow's edge, a scarlet tanager alights on a white pine. Are there words for us, America, high on the uppermost branch? Just going to read two more poems. This poem takes place also in Sri Lanka, although it doesn't matter, but it's where I happened to see a white ant, and I'd never seen a white ant before. So I didn't know there were white ants. Fable. Oh, my children, the ant has a boulder in its mouth. Pale white ant rushes with a potato chip that fell yesterday from our table. I was like that once, moving rapidly, taking food home, bearing the weight, because an ant is a lever, its body a physics. The weight of the chip is nothing to it. Oh, wonders of the world, I am nothing compared to the work. And I'll end with this poem that it's called Translation. And I wanted to mention the translator for who I reference, not by name in the poem, but she's an amazing translator of Dostoevsky. She died in 2010. Her name is Svetlana Geyer. And anyone who's interested in translation should get there's a documentary about her called The Five Elephants. That's what she called the Dostoevsky books that she was translating, her Five Elephants. So it's an amazing sort of entry into what goes on in translation. She was quite a woman. Translation. In English, we come to grief and drive drunk over a cliff, or it befalls us, a stroke or lightning, and we grieve. A famous translator said to her students, "Tend the fire." Every word born with its sphere of heat. Look up from your pages was another phrase she'd use. Both at once, like riding a bicycle with no hands. At her desk, the translator wrapped a dictionary absently, searching for a pattern as she mourned her son's accidental death, an absurd event. The heat searches for us. Last night, every leaf blew off the linden tree. This morning, it's filled with ravens flapping their jewel black wings, lifting off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abigail Wender. Looks like we have some time for questions. And Karen Alanier is the Grand Inquisitor here at Café Muse. So I will throw it over to her. And Karen, have you got some questions for our poets?
Well, I have at least one question. And that is, both of these wonderful poets employ lively wordplay. And I was wondering, what comes first in your poetry? Is it word or a phrase, or is it an image or story? How do you work when you work your way up to such amazing, sounds and, alliteration, all of these things. So maybe Kelly, you could start first.
Yes, no problem. That is, I think it depends from poem to poem, and whatever you've got going on in your life. I mean, it's sometimes, I mean, I do make a lot of notes. So if something comes in, I don't let it just go away. I write it down. And so I tend to have a little pile of scraps that come when I'm putting together a poem. And it's sometimes it'll be a phrase, or sometimes it'll be an image. It just really depends. And I have found keeping shower notes, they're waterproof notes. They're called aqua notes, that Kelly Russell Ogadon told me about, I don't know how many years ago. And they've been lifesavers because it's literally the only time I have peace in my house is when I'm in the shower. And sometimes these images will come in and I write them down. So I just keep collecting them. And then other times when I've been lucky enough to be on retreat, something is just rattling that I've been percolating on or something, and whatever makes the most noise gets the attention. So it's hard to say. You could be reading something, you could see something, you could hear other people's work, and that triggers something. I just think it's important to be really open to it when it comes by and not let it go by. Kind of take it and write it down and keep it elsewhere, and maybe that will develop into something. Maybe not, but that's my process.
I like it. I think it's really interesting. I always learn something new from people when we ask these kinds of questions. So what do you say, Abby? How does yours work?
Well, I wrote that down about aqua notes. I've never heard of that before, but that's brilliant. How do my poems work? Well, the sequence that I read to you, which I've never really read all at once, so I decided I would do that because we had quite a lot of time, was written as letters. So it evolved from an initial draft of letters. And those poems were definitely spurred by particular events. But I think in general, wordplay, like children's rhymes, and just the feeling of the impetus of putting words together and seeing how they react to each other is something that spurs more writing. So often when I am writing in my journal, which is where poems start for me, it's not what I did today or anything like that. It's just random sentences. And out of those random sentences, I'll see a preoccupation. And one of the ways I keep going is often to either rhyme or to play off of one word will bring to mind another word. And I think it's somehow both a joy to see that happening, and also you open up something in yourself that you're not consciously working. I try not to begin with an idea. Sometimes an idea comes later and that helps rework the poem, but I can't say I go into the writing with this big idea. Usually when I do, I'm really angry about something, and that doesn't work as a poem. That's more of a diatribe, and that's fine. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, I think that does answer the question. And I also think that it probably plays into this other question that I was going to ask, but I'm not sure that I want to ask it, but I'll throw it out there on the table. And if you have any thoughts, you can chime in, but either one of you. But I think it's very difficult to write poems about grief. And I think that both of you have succeeded well in writing about grief. And I wonder, in light of what Abby just said, that she doesn't go at it head on. In other words, if you're going in with a whole big idea, you might end up with a diatribe, or you might end up with something that doesn't quite work. And, the whole issue of how do you write grief poems that don't stumble all over each other.
Well, I do think that Emily Dickinson was very correct when she said, say it slant. However, whatever that means to you, I think she, that my, that works.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I certainly didn't come to this thinking that I'm going to write a book about grief. And, that's where I started. It was just sort of, this book was written like over a 10-year period. And a lot happens in a life over 10 years where you lose parents and friends and dogs and whatever is coming at you, all sorts of different things. A hysterectomy. I mean, so there's lots of different losses that that happened. And so you just sort of, but you don't go, okay, I'm going to sit down and, write a poem about my mom dying or something. I mean, it just kind of comes to the surface. And like I say, I really just think it's just being aware that things are going on there and they want to come out. And going at it slant is probably the best way to do it, to where it's not sounding like an essay or something of that nature, to where, it really is a poem. I've been reading Reliquary since it came out, and I'm just astounded by how well Abby does that. And I love her reticence, which I think is really wonderful. I'm a big fan of reticence. So that's just what's not said is really wonderful. And she does that beautifully.
Thank you. I think that's quite interesting. Henry has alerted me that Barbara Goldberg has a question, and we're going to allow her to ask it directly.
I'm not going to be censored. No, I have a question of fact, and that is, Abigail, who do you translate and from what language? I didn't catch that. What was the language?
I translate from German.
German.
And the book that was published is called The Bureau of Past Management.
Okay.
It's by a contemporary woman novelist. Actually, it's a novel called, her name is Hanneke, Iris Hanneke.
Who was the one who said Grift in German means poison? I think it was you, Kelly.
It's Kelly.
Yeah, it's a gift.
She's fluent too.
Gift.
Well, that was the question of fact. The other is observation. You both write about birds a lot.
I noticed that too.
and you seem to know about birds. It's not just, the name. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. And the other is, I find the two of you have very different kind of modes of closure or lack of it. And Kelly, I mean, I don't know if it was Emily Dickens who said that, either a door or a window, but I find your work is more of a door, like it closes. Mm-hmm. Whereas Abigail, sometimes when your poems ended, I wanted to say, what? And then I realized, oh, it's because she opened a window. It's like that dog line that came at the end of that poem. So I think that's really beautiful that we should see two such examples in one reading. That's all.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And Barbara is the WordWorks editor for our international editions. So I'm glad she asked that question about translation, because we don't always get poets who are involved with translation unless that's, their main line. I think that's it for the evening. And we really enjoyed hearing from you, your poems, the musicality, the invention of them. And I'm going to turn it back to Henry.
Okay, all right. In closing, let me ask you to please join us for our next Café Muse reading on Monday, August 1st. It's our annual translation program, emceed by that renowned poet who we were just listening to, translator Barbara Goldberg. And be sure not to miss a very special WordWorks event on Wednesday, July 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is just a couple of days from now on Wednesday, when the WordWorks will present the YouTube premiere of the last ever Joaquin Miller poetry program and tribute to Jacqueline Potter. The video was recorded on June 9 and will premiere on YouTube Wednesday night. Visit our premiere homepage. You can go over there using the link that I'll put in the chat, and you can set up a reminder and watch and comment on the video along with the entire WordWorks community. And so I will put that link into the chat. Here we go. And I think with that, we have concluded our night. I want to thank everyone for coming in. Let's have a big Zoom applause for our two poets tonight. And they opened doors and windows, and absolutely terrific night of poetry. Thank you all for coming. As we go forward this summer, I will wish the best for you, and please stay safe. Thank you.